Here's why Rhaenys felt betrayed when Corlys chose the Greens. The queen who never was spent her entire life being passed over for the throne because she had the audacity to be born female, and then her own husband, the man who claimed to support her through decades of political disappointment, looked at the dance of the dragons brewing and said, "You know what? Maybe the side that literally represents everything that kept you from power has a point." If that doesn't sound like the ultimate betrayal wrapped in maritime flags and Valerian pride, then buckle up because we are about to dissect a marriage that survived politics, war, and questionable parenting, but almost shattered over one catastrophically bad decision. Before we dive into this relationship drama that makes reality television look tame, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because this channel breaks down the emotional carnage that happens when power politics invades your marriage. Let us start with the fundamental context that makes Corlys' decision to even consider supporting the Greens an absolute knife in Rhaenys' back. Rhaenys Targaryen was passed over for the Iron Throne at the Great Council of 101 AC, specifically because the lords of Westeros decided that a man's claim through a younger son was stronger than a woman's claim through the elder son. That council literally established the precedent that women could not inherit the throne, and that precedent directly led to Rhaenyra's situation decades later. So when the Dance of the Dragons erupted over the exact same issue, whether a woman could sit the Iron Throne, Corlys looking at the Greens and thinking maybe they have legitimate points, is like someone who got robbed watching another robbery happen and saying, well, let us hear the thieves out. That is not political neutrality. That is betraying everything your wife's life represented. Now here is where Corlys' potential defection to the Greens becomes even more insulting when you factor in family history. Corlys Velaryon built his entire legacy on two foundations. First, his personal achievements as the Sea Snake, becoming the richest man in Westeros through trade and exploration. Second, his marriage alliance with House Targaryen through Rhaenys, positioning House Velaryon as a major power player in the realm. Everything Corlys accomplished was amplified by his connection to Targaryen legitimacy through his wife. And then when that legitimacy is threatened by the exact same sexist political machinery that cheated Rhaenys out of her birthright, Corlys considers siding with the people perpetuating that system. That is like building your entire business on a partnership and then considering joining the company trying to destroy your partner. It is not just bad politics. It is personal betrayal disguised as strategic thinking. But wait, because the layers of betrayal get even more complex when you examine Corlys' motivations for considering the Green cause. It wasn't about principle or believing Aegon had a stronger claim. It was about protecting House Velaryon's interests and securing his grandson's futures. Corlys looked at the board and calculated that supporting the Greens might offer better odds for Velaryon's survival and prosperity. On paper, that is just pragmatic politics. In reality, it is telling your wife that her lifetime of pain and disappointment matters less than a favorable trade deal and a seat at the table with the people who represent everything wrong with Westerosi succession law. Rhaenys didn't just feel betrayed because Corlys picked the wrong side. She felt betrayed because his willingness to even consider the Greens proved he never truly understood what she had lost or why this fight mattered beyond political calculation. Here is the absolutely devastating part of this betrayal that cuts right to the core of their marriage. Rhaenys and Corlys had been partners for decades. They survived court politics together. They lost children together. They built one of the most powerful houses in Westeros together. And through all of that, Rhaenys probably believed that Corlys understood her, that he saw her not just as the queen who never was, but as someone whose claim had been legitimate and whose loss had been unjust. So when the Dance of the Dragons presented a chance to support a woman's rightful claim to the throne, and Corlys hesitated, it revealed something Rhaenys had probably suspected but never wanted to confirm. Her husband valued power and legacy more than justice, and more than validating the pain she had carried for an entire lifetime. That is not just political disagreement. That is discovering your life partner doesn't actually share your core values when those values conflict with practical advantage. The timing of Corlys' consideration of the Greens makes the betrayal even more pointed. This wasn't early in the conflict when positions were still fluid and alliances were being formed. This was after sides had been chosen, after commitments had been made, after Rhaenys herself had already declared for Rhaenyra and been actively fighting for the Black cause. Corlys wasn't just picking a side. He was potentially abandoning his wife's side, which is Relationship Dynamics 101-4, How to Make Your Spouse Question Everything About Your Marriage in One Easy Step. It is like watching your partner take a stand on something deeply personal and important to them, and then publicly considering joining the opposition because it might be more profitable. That is not strategy. That is choosing money over your spouse's dignity, and no amount of, but the grandchildren justification makes that okay. Let's talk about the power dynamics within the Velaryon marriage that this betrayal exposed. Corlys was always the louder voice, the public face, the one making the big moves. Rhaenys was the Targaryen princess who brought legitimacy and dragon blood, but often seemed to be supporting her husband's ambitions rather than pursuing her own. This dynamic probably worked fine when their interests aligned. But the moment Corlys considered breaking ranks, it revealed the uncomfortable truth that their partnership was never quite equal. Corlys had the power to make decisions that affected both of them, and Rhaenys had the power to object, but not necessarily to overrule. That is not betrayal of an equal partner. That is a power structure being exposed, and Rhaenys realizing that her voice in her own marriage carried less weight than her husband's political calculations. Imagine spending decades thinking you are in a partnership only to discover you are actually the junior partner whose vote is advisory, but not binding. Now here is where the emotional damage of Corlys' betrayal becomes truly devastating. Rhaenys. So why did Rhaenys feel betrayed when Corlys chose, or even considered, the Greens? Because it invalidated her entire life's pain. Because it proved he valued power over her principles. Because it showed that their partnership had limits she thought didn't exist. Because after a lifetime of being overlooked for being female, even her own husband was willing to side with the people who made that happen. Because the Dance of the Dragons was not just another political conflict to her. It was personal, and Corlys treating it like a business decision was the ultimate dismissal of everything she had endured and everything she was fighting for. Thanks for watching. Remember, in Westeros, sometimes the deepest betrayals come from the people sharing your bed, not your enemies on the battlefield.